Good evening and welcome. My name is Lisa Ornstein. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the co-founder of Olympia Indivisible, and it is my great honor to welcome you here this evening for a town hall with Derek Sanders, who is running for Thurston County Sheriff. I would like to begin this evening with a land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Puget Sound Salish people and Sahawamish tribe. We acknowledge the sovereignty of the Nisqually, Puyallup, Squaxin Island, and Chehalis tribes, past and present, and express our gratitude to them and the land itself. Through this acknowledgement, we signal our participation in the necessary project of reimagining the social contracts between Native people and the rest of us who have shown up through different routes to these Native nations. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step toward true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous people of this land and beyond. Okay, and now all I need to do is get back to my agenda, and here we are. Okay, so a few housekeeping issues and a few announcements, and then I'm going to turn things over to John, who will turn them over to Derek. So this meeting will be recorded because, as we all know, it's a kind of busy night tonight, right? All kinds of stuff going on. So please stay muted during the town hall with Derek. If you have questions, that's great. Drop them in the chat box and put a capital letter Q before your questions so we know this is a question for Derek. And we'll be turning those over to him at the end of the session. A couple of announcements about upcoming events of interest. Okay, so hey, I don't have my apron, but my AKA is Chef Lisa at the Action Cafe, which is open on Mondays, noon to 1, for all of you to come into the bright virtual sunlit cafe and take some actions. We always draw from the call to action that goes out on Sunday, add a few menu items of our own, news, good fellowship, and a side order of fiddle tunes. So you'll find that link to register on our website. I want to bang the drum for Dr. Kim Schreier, Congressional Representative for CD8. She's going to be in the race of her life. Please, if you have time this coming weekend or the following weekend, consider going out canvassing. There's also phone banking opportunities for Kim Schreier's campaign. You will find all of this on our website under the candidate support calendar, along with opportunities we hope to go out and bang the drum for Derek. There's also opportunities for postcarding for Ty Menser and for the federal races in Georgia and North Carolina. Two other events. I want to bring your attention to a call to action that went out yesterday, inviting you to get in touch with Carla Wolfsburg to stand up for the employees of the Port of Olympia, 60% of whom have sent a no confidence letter to the port commissioners about their toxic manager, Sam Gibney. We really need to show up. I'm going to be there. Hope you will be there too. It's at 5 o'clock at the port office. Carla will give you all the details if you just get in touch with her. Go take a look at that email, and we'll be home by 6 p.m. So it's a short soak. The other one I want to invite you to is a training with the incandescent powerhouse Alexa Brenner of Planned Parenthood. And this is about smart messaging and smart organizing in the wake of Roe v. Wade. That will be on Wednesday, July 27th at 7:30. You got an email about that today. It will be in our call to action, as will be the other items I mentioned. All right. So, with no further ado, I want to pass the mic over to John Cezanne, who is a stalwart OI member. He is on the candidate interface team and is liaison for Derek Sanders' campaign. Take it away, John.
Thanks, Lisa. Boy, a whole lot of stuff going on now. So just do what you can do. So hi, everyone. I'm John Cezanne, and I'd like to welcome you to Olympia Indivisible's Candidate Town Hall. And we are really fortunate and happy to have our endorsed candidate for Thurston County Sheriff, Derek Sanders, with us tonight. Derek Sanders is a lifelong resident of Thurston County, and he is currently serving as a deputy on the Thurston County Sheriff's Department. And he joined the department in 2016, and he's a first-time candidate for public office. Please feel free to put any questions you may have in the chat. We're recording the interview and it'll be posted on the OI website. But let's start off with Derek to give us a little introduction to himself and tell us why he is running for Thurston County Sheriff, and then we'll get into some questions after that.
Excellent. Thank you, John. So like he said, my name is Derek Sanders, candidate for Thurston County Sheriff. I'll give a little bit of backstory to kind of my story a little bit. So I was born in California, father African-American, mom is Caucasian. They got pregnant at 16 and never got together after that. They split up. Mom went on to marry someone who was less than desirable. I'll just leave it at that. And I started experiencing domestic violence and child abuse in the household pretty early on. My earliest memory of that's probably four or 5 years old. Mom getting tossed around, and then eventually it spread to me. So he was pretty abusive to me. Didn't like Black people, that kind of thing. So we ultimately, when I was 8 years old, we were living in Colorado, and we decided that we'd rather be homeless. So we moved into a domestic violence shelter. But back then, especially back then, we were constantly shifting out of domestic violence shelters, trying to find support. At one point, we were living in a 1988 Ford Aerostar minivan, going between shelters, ended up moving up here to Washington, where my grandparents are. And this is where I call home. This is where I found stability in my life. So grandparents were here, moved in, and it was kind of the shifting part of my story, right? I kind of found those father figures. I met my biological father at that time. And my entire life turned around. I went from getting suspended in school to kind of excelling in school a little bit. Graduated, attended some college down in Louisiana where my dad moved, and then ended up running out of money because I was paying cash for that. Came back up here to Washington. My mom was a TCOM 911 dispatcher. She's like, hey, Lacey is hiring this entry-level community service officer position. So ended up getting hired on with Lacey Police Department at the age of 20. At the age of 22, Thurston County Sheriff's Office hired me. And I've served as a deputy sheriff since then in that role. As far as why I decided to run for sheriff, when you first get hired, you spend so much of your time learning the job, because when you go to be a police officer or a deputy sheriff, there's so much going on. You attend the basic law enforcement academy, and then you come out and you've got 3.5 months with a field training officer, and it's super stressful because the transition is abrupt. You get comfortable at the academy, and then you come out, and all of a sudden you're talking to real people. These are real people with real problems. And you're expected, even on phase 1, to start jumping in and taking action. So I excelled pretty quick. I had no flaws during my field training period. And quite frankly, I felt like I really grasped the job really early on in my career. I was getting high marks, had some collisions here and there, trying to go out and do proactive police work and do good work. But outside of that, I've never had any malicious discipline. In my time, I've never even had a use of force complaint. No one has ever called and said Deputy Sanders used excessive force on me, let alone, just unfounded. So very few complaints. You can't make everyone happy, so I've had a good time here at the sheriff's office. But as you kind of progress through your career a little bit, especially in government work, I feel like once you get comfortable, your scope opens up a little bit, right? The tunnel vision of learning how to do the job opens. And I started seeing things that didn't quite make sense to me. And so it started off with misconduct, right? you have to compare things. And so I'm looking at some of the discipline I got for, crashing cars, and it was consistent. I was getting the same discipline for crashing a vehicle or crashing, my second vehicle as someone was getting for driving drunk. And so I started to question some of these things. And of course, they just, you're just a thorn. You're just complaining. I'm like, well, I really want to make this place better. And so then I started seeing things really start to go downhill when we entered COVID. So obviously COVID shut our jail down, and that was huge, I think, for public safety. And it was huge for morale at the department, because while I do think that there's a lot of room for diversion, there's a lot of people that cannot be diverted, right? Our serial burglar needs to be arrested and put in jail. That's just how I feel about it. He's not going to stop burging houses on his 17th house and his 15th car. He's going to continue to go do those things. And so we weren't able to do that. It shut down all of our property crimes. And so we are still dealing with that today. As we currently speak, the list of bookable crimes for felony property crimes has changed very little. We're still restricted on who we can book into the jail. And that's coming from someone who doesn't think that the jail is our end all be all option for dealing with crime and dealing with recidivism and all those kind of things and kind of restorative justice. So then we moved on to the canine Arlo whole ordeal. I had kind of an intimate up close view of that. And this is really what started kind of my role to decide to run for office, is that I was in that pursuit. I was in the whole thing when the dog was shot by friendly fire. And obviously some mistakes were made by the handler early on. And I think that there was some trauma that went into that for him. But ultimately what it came down to, a long story short, is that he ended up embezzling quite a bit of money from the canine fund. And we all know it. It was plainly obvious. It was plainly indicated in the internal investigation. And I started seeing the writing on the wall. The agency wasn't going to do anything about this. And we're talking about likely anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 that was embezzled. So I got to the point where I start asking these questions, right? I'm texting my chiefs. I'm like, hey, are we going to do anything about this guy? Because this isn't feeling right. This doesn't seem ethical at all. No response, of course. Next thing I know, he's given a settlement agreement, right, to go away quietly. He's allowed to keep all the money, and he's allowed to keep the dog for $1. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me with this administration. I lost all trust in our sheriff. I lost all trust in our administration because that's a reflection of me. Because it's not the sheriff who's going to come under fire. He can hide from the Olympian. He can hide from the Chronicle. It's going to be our deputies that are going out in the streets and making contact with people to go, oh, aren't you guys the agency that lets your own deputies commit crimes? So we were dealing with that on the road, and the administration didn't seem to care very much. And then the legislation changed, and that changed everything for us because we got the impression that the sheriff quit on us. Crime exploded. Again, some of the laws went too far. Some of the laws were great. Some of them went too far. They need to be fixed. But in the meantime, we are not putting our best foot forward. We've made it very clear that we are going to punish the citizens because this is what you guys voted for. And so we're just going to let this county burn. Prime example, we are one of only, I think, 3 counties in the entire state that doesn't chase drunk drivers. And the other agency is King County, which that kind of makes sense because they're so densely populated, they never really chase cars to begin with, and Lewis County, where his twin brother works. I don't know of another agency that is not chasing for DUI. And that's not because getting drunk drivers off the road is important. It's just that it just seems like the sheriff is upset with the laws. And so he's just sticking it to you guys, right? We're just not going to play at all. So those things all rubbed me the wrong way. And it got to the point where my criticisms became so vocal of the sheriff that he said, if you think you can do a better job, run for sheriff yourself. And so 2 weeks later, I filed with the PDC because I can do a better job. I can hold deputies who commit crimes accountable, and I can also go out and hold people who commit crimes accountable. That's not something that I feel is mutually exclusive. And so I just got to the point at where, I started seeking a candidate, couldn't find one. And I'm like, I'll just do this myself. If no one else is going to step up to this guy, because you're all afraid of retaliation, you're afraid of your careers being, sent down the drain if you lose, well, I'll do it then. So I filed for the position of sheriff. And, ironically, I did it initially because, I thought I could do a better job. I think that we're not doing a good enough job. But I also wanted John, even if he just, totally crushed me in the election, I really wanted John to come out to the community and explain to them and our deputies, because he doesn't talk to us, explain to us what we're going to do different. Because right now it's not sustainable. We've lost 7 deputies in 6 months. we're losing more, and we don't have the deputies to backfill that. They're taking forever through the academy to backfill. So we're just getting hammered every night with overtime. And so I wanted him to come out and tell us, what are you going to do different, John? And ironically, it's been the complete opposite. I've gained tons of traction. I'm picking up key endorsements every day. And John has still not put a single platform policy issue out. I attended a deal with him at Thurston County Realtors. And, he basically they asked him, what's the biggest issue in the county? And he said homelessness. And I tend to agree. That's a huge issue that we need to help solve. And his answer was basically like, there's a lot of smart politicians in this room. Hopefully you guys can figure it out. And I just, hearing answers like that, they're vague. They don't provide any solutions, and they worry me. They make me believe that the sheriff who is leading me at work every night doesn't actually have a solution for anything that we're trying to do. So here I am, candidate for Thurston County Sheriff 2022.
Well, we're really happy that you decided to run. We've had a lot of, we've had a lot of problems with Sheriff Snazza ourselves over the years. So let me ask you a few things about this campaign. It seems to me that you run for sheriff against an incumbent, which is your boss, is kind of a gutsy thing to do. Have you received any pushback from within the sheriff's department? And since you declared your candidacy, and how would you characterize your support within the department?
It's one of those things where I feel like the support in the department is kind of fractured horizontally, right? I've got a few administrators who said that they'll support me. John's got most of the administration who's going to support him because that just naturally makes sense. They're at the top of his hierarchy. He promoted them. And then, John's got some deputies that support him. I probably have, I would guess I have more deputies who support me just from the ground. But, the difference between our support at the agency is mine all comes in silently. I have people texting me. I have people stopping me saying, hey, we're really happy that you're running. We're excited about this. We think we might stay and not lateral to a different agency quite yet because we're curious to see if you win. We think things will get better. Whereas John has extremely vocal support, obviously, because he's expected to win. He is the 3-time incumbent. Everyone knows his name. And the people who are cheering him on only serve to benefit, right? I mean, he's going to look back and say, oh, so-and-so cheered me on. And he has a history of making promises to multiple people for the same position at our agency. So, a lot of them came to me and they're like, apparently 3 of us were all told by John for the same lieutenant position that we were all going to get promoted. So that's kind of how it's fractured a little bit at the department. I haven't received a whole lot of pushback. At one point I had an issue with the lieutenant who was holding me to a different standard. He would tell me one thing and then change it completely the next day. Thankfully, our chief is really reasonable at the department, and that was all set straight. So I haven't had any issues since. Obviously, it's uncomfortable. I'm running against my boss, so every time I walk into the department, it's, everyone kind of looks and they're like, oh, that's the dude who's kind of challenging number 1 over here. And but again, none of this is personal for me, right? It's just, I'll be honest, the part where he challenged me is kind of personal, because based on my life experience, right, I perceive myself as a winner who can make it through anything I have to make it through. Like the worst has already come. So for you to challenge me and basically be like, if you think you can do better, run, it's like, okay. And I don't think he expected me to accept that challenge. I truly don't think that he anticipated that I would actually do it.
Yeah, well, and here you are.
Here
So you mentioned Tyler McCoy Turpin, and so he was interviewed, and he stated that he thought that the sheriff's department management, he characterized them as a good old boys club. And I was wondering if you concur with that assessment, or how would you characterize the management?
This is a tough one because on one hand, I do think it's a good old boys club a little bit. On the other, I understand why, right? So the sheriff appoints 4 positions. Well, I'll focus on the 4 that I'm familiar with that he appoints, right? So he appoints an undersheriff, which really is like the right hand of the sheriff, right? That's the person who really runs the budget. They're doing a lot of the labor management meetings. They're constantly working with commissioners. The sheriff is more of the figurehead, right? They're the ones, to me, who are responsible for inspiring morale and setting kind of the bumpers of the mission of the department. Then you got your 3 chiefs. And you would never, if you were elected sheriff tomorrow, John, you wouldn't put 3 random people you don't know up there. So there has to be some level of trust. I get that. The difference is, and again, whether the people that he's placed up there, I love them to death. I think that they're great people. But I also can't deny the fact that when John replaced a lot of his staff, 2 of his staff members, he put, one of them quit on him, and the other one he basically pushed out. When he replaced those 2 positions, an undersheriff and a chief, it was shortly after that this place really started going downhill internally. It got so bad that we were talking about doing a vote of no confidence as a guild. So it just got so horrific. The decision making every day coming down was so bad but that all started right after he changed this administration around. So I would consider it to be a good old boys club, right? I mean, like, if you're going out and you're regularly hanging out with, your chiefs and undersheriffs, and they're your best friends, and everyone knows that they've been your lifelong friend for the last couple decades, then yeah, by all intents and purposes, you're promoting your friends to these positions. And my issue with that is, where's the professional dissent, right? I'm sure I could stand up to my friend all the time if he makes bad decisions, right? I mean, you need that professional dissent. And I felt we had it with the previous administration. You had, someone would throw something crazy out there, and the other, like, hang on. Like, we're not doing that. That's crazy. We need to calm down and think this through. I don't feel that anymore. The decisions that come down feel rushed. They feel like everyone just agreed all at once, and they just get sent down to us.
Okay, well, you've stated that you believe that the Thurston County Sheriff's Department is heading in a quote, dangerous direction under its current leadership.
Yeah.
So what is currently going on at the Sheriff's Department that leads you to that conclusion?
I think everything that we're experiencing, obviously there's the obvious stuff, right? The laws changed and the sheriff's office has done nothing to adapt. And I mean, absolutely nothing. I can tell you, as a frontline worker, someone who responds to 911 calls for a living, the sheriff's office has made 0 changes to address the new laws that have come out, right? And so what I mean when I say we're heading in a dangerous direction, I truly believe that the way that police departments work is that how they're treated from management ultimately reflects how they treat the citizens. So if you have a sheriff who's unapproachable, saying things like, if you don't like it, leave, and just generally treating employees poorly, those employees are probably more likely to be stressed out and take it out on civilians, right? I mean, we see it every day. If you were a McDonald's worker like I was, you would get to the point at where you would essentially, if your boss is always screaming at you, you're probably going to eventually start taking out on customers, right? It's the same thing. This is a customer service related job. We provide a service. And so when I say that we're heading in a dangerous direction, what I really mean is that morale has gotten so poor and so many deputies have left that what we're doing is not sustainable. And it is a vicious cycle that is going to continue to eat itself. So we've got deputies that leave because they're not happy. They go, and they're not just leaving law enforcement, right? It's not the law enforcement's problem. They're going to other agencies within our own county, mind you. So they're going to other agencies, and now we don't have enough bodies to staff the road. So you need to work overtime tonight. And now these employees are getting burnt out, and they're under the same stress that caused the other ones to leave. And we're not getting any laterals. We have not received a lateral application since, I think, October of last year. So not one single police officer who's currently a police officer and certified in the country has decided they want to come work for our sheriff's office. Not one. And that should tell you everything you need to know. So it's a dangerous direction that we're going in. And, we're losing the best deputies that we have. We're not losing deputies that, just sit at the station and do nothing. We're losing SWAT team operators with tons of experience. We're losing hostage negotiators, field training officers, explorer advisors who do the explorer, like the youth programs. We're losing them. They're all going to other agencies. Not sustainable. We've invested so much money in them.
Yeah, sounds pretty bad. And I was just going to ask you about a staffing crisis. So they basically just explained that. So you say that there is more need for accountability and transparency at the department. And that significant deputy misconduct was swept under the rug, and you talked a little bit about that.
Yep.
Can you provide us with some examples, other examples of this, and what measures would you take in the Sheriff's Department to make it more transparent and accountable and to build trust in the community?
Well, we've had a number of deputies arrested since I've worked here. And, I'm not here to say that they're bad people by any means. But, just because you're not a bad person doesn't mean that you're fit to be in the law enforcement community. You know what I mean? So there are deputies that committed crimes. And only until I started running for sheriff and kind of running on this platform, all of a sudden we're doing press releases for deputies who are arrested. It's weird how that works, right? The timing of it is just uncanny. Whereas that's something I've been asking since I got here. Hey, why don't we just do a short press release and say, hey, like, this deputy got arrested for this crime. It's extremely sad. Our thoughts are with the victim. Tumwater Police Department's investigating. Refer to them, please. And you wash your hands of it, right? Instead, it's always been kept so close to the sheriff's office and just trying to keep any bad press. It just always has to look perfect. And law enforcement is not perfect. We are fallible human beings who make mistakes. And I don't think that society demands perfection from us. They just want to know that we're accountable like they are. And not held to some lower standard just because we have a gun and a badge. So some of the things that I'd be looking to do is establish a civilian advisory board. So that'll be something that I look to establish that is diversified and spread out throughout the county. And obviously the job of the civilian advisory board is pretty broad, but discipline is one of those things, right? And it's good for deputies and for our community. It allows community members to get engaged and hear things. And it also allows our deputies to have kind of an oversight of eyes to say, hey, like that discipline seemed really harsh. Why did that occur, right? So it just gives a different perspective, I think, because currently, right, the only one who determines what happens with discipline is the sheriff. I think just having that balance a little bit. It's not someone who sits over the sheriff. It's just someone who sits next to them, or a group of people that sits next to the sheriff and kind of gives feedback on what's going on. And hey, like, you can do that, but that would be really unpopular, and we don't think that's fair. So that would be a couple of things. And like I said, we'll be mandatorily disclosing deputy misconduct. It won't be a choice, right? If deputies commit substantial misconduct, we'll do a press release. We'll get it out there. An independent agency will be investigating. So I don't have a twin brother, but if I did have a twin brother, we wouldn't be sending my investigations from my sheriff's office over to my twin brother. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's probably a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Well, I think the civilian advisory idea is terrific. I think, help connect the sheriff department to the community.
Yes, we need to rebuild this trust, and we're running out of time. And then we can't figure out why the legislator changes all these laws and creates all these accountability laws. Well, it's because we are expected to go out and police the community, but we can't even police ourselves. It's kind of a joke, right? I mean.
So a question came in from Catherine. She said, can you explain what the new laws are and how they are not being implemented? Yeah,
so in July of 2021, a bunch of different House bills were passed, 1054, 1310, and then 1054 and 1310 were the big ones for us because it was about police tactics, not necessarily accountability. I think it's important to differentiate between police tactics and police accountability. So police tactics changes how we do our jobs. Police accountability laws impact how we're held accountable if we err. And so I try to differentiate the two because I found that I supported most of the accountability laws and I supported less of the tactics laws. So let me give you an example, because I know this is probably going to be a question that comes up anyways. Under House Bill 1054, one of the things that I feel like has caused an explosion in crime is that it prevented police officers from pursuing vehicles. So we had to have probable cause, which raised the threshold for us for either a violent felony or DUI. Now the legislator recognized that DUI, the drunk drivers obviously kill people at an extraordinary rate. So they included DUI in there, even though it's not a violent felony. The sheriff decided that we're just not going to pursue for DUI. So every night we let drunk drivers go. I'm here to tell you, every single night we observe drunk drivers and we try to turn our lights on and they're like, I'm drunk. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm fleeing. And now they're going 100 miles an hour down the road drunk. And, we turn our lights off and we have to turn the other way. So that's just an example of one law that's probably the biggest example of something we could be doing that he's just decided that we're just not going to do.
Yeah, so that's something you could change if you were.
I can change day one deputies. And it's not about pursuing every single drunk driver. It's about allowing the deputies and the sergeants who are on scene processing the information to make good, sound decisions on when to pursue a drunk driver and when not to pursue a drunk driver. I wouldn't expect a deputy to chase a drunk driver through a school zone, right? I would expect a deputy to chase a drunk driver down Vale Road at 2 a.m, right? I mean, we have to weigh these risks and rewards when we're doing things, and we always have. So it's just about having those opportunities to thwart crime whenever we can, right? Whenever the law and our morals allow us to deal with crime, we should do so. in my opinion. We shouldn't just sit back and say, well, screw the county. We're just going to let this place, well, all the drunk drivers, hey, drive drunk. We don't care. Do what you want to do. I can't accept that. The other laws were fixed. We're allowed to use reasonable force on Terry stops again, which are basically reasonable suspicion stops, right? So there was a huge issue where, if I found someone prowling around your house with a crowbar at 2 a.m. and they ran, I don't have probable cause. I have reasonable suspicion. And so they fixed that law, thankfully. And so a lot of the tactics laws have been fixed. There were tactics laws that I totally agreed with, right? Like requiring a higher standard to use tear gas at protests. I don't have any issue with that. Banning the use of chokeholds, as long as we're allowed to still use chokeholds under deadly force, right? If I'm going to be killed, it shouldn't really matter how I protect myself, as long as it's reasonable and it's not cruel and unusual, which I think that's been clarified. And then we also had the banning of no-knock warrants. I've never been in a no-knock warrant situation. We've never used them. So that didn't affect us as a sheriff's office. It wasn't within our policy or procedure already. And then there were a ton of laws that I totally supported off on the accountability side. In fact, I didn't really have any disagreements with any of them, right? We should be expanding the decertification process for the state to get involved. Because what we don't want is for deputies to commit crimes and get fired and then go on to another police agency and get hired on because they still have a state certification. So fully supportive of the fact that the state is now taking a proactive approach to making sure that those police officers and deputies cannot get hired on at other agencies.
Okay, get rid of the bad apples.
Yep, get them out. Don't need them.
Okay, well, thanks for that explanation. So Sheriff Snaza was subject to a potential recall when he refused to enforce the mask mandate for state employees interacting with the public. How would you have handled that situation?
I'm not going to sit here and tell you something that you want to hear. I would have handled it a little bit differently, but the solution to that. So the way that I remember that going down, it's been some time now, is that the mask mandate came out, and basically I think it was a ticket, right? I think it was a civil infraction if you violated it. And part of the issue that I had was, where can that ticket be issued, right? Can it be issued in a public space? Are we required to wear a mask? So indoors, I think that the sheriff's office would have taken the approach of, the way that it was put out was we're going to take an education first approach. Where I think it was poorly worded was, I don't like when sheriffs and police chiefs come out and say, we're just not enforcing this, because it gives the public this idea that, well, I just don't have to follow along at all. I think a better way to word it, and I can't remember how exactly it was worded, but obviously it made a lot of people mad, is that deputies will use discretion, right, to enforce the mask mandate. Just like, you wouldn't want a deputy who gives a ticket every time he pulls someone over for 5 over. Every time someone wears a mask doesn't necessarily mean they need to get a ticket. I've written not many. I've given a lot of breaks in my career writing tickets and things like that, because I personally like to take an education first approach, right? It's when I think that people can't be educated on the matter that you take the action of writing a ticket and letting a judge decide. So for me, the mask mandate, we couldn't take them to jail. That didn't make sense anyways. And so it ended up just being a ticket. But the way that we word things as elected officials, I think is really important, right? It's just like when sheriffs and police chiefs come out and say that they're just not going to enforce this gun law at all. Well, that's kind of problematic, because, even some of the gun laws that I strongly disagree with, I think that there are situations where you could see like, well, maybe we would need to take enforcement action on that. So I think you have to look at this in a more reasonable scope. But I wouldn't have run a sheriff's office that was going to run around and write people a bunch of tickets. My personal opinion on the mask thing is that if individual businesses want people removed for not wearing a mask, then just like any other request from a business, we can remove that person from the business. But I would have taken, hopefully, in an educational approach. But
I think that the issue is that if a business owner needed assistance, and this happened a lot, as I recall during that time, that the implication was that you're not going to get any help from the sheriff's department.
See, if that's what we're talking about, then I would disagree with that, right? Because if a business owner following the mandate rules wants someone removed from their property, and I actually get it, right? Regardless of how you feel about the mask stuff, okay? The governor issued a mandate and the state was going around and fining people for violating those mandates. So if a business owner doesn't want to get fined, and they have a patron or a customer who's in there, won't wear a mask, then the sheriff's office, I think, should get involved in that, right? My issue is just I don't want to run around writing people a bunch of frivolous tickets all the time, just because I don't know what that fixes. You're just going to make people mad. But as far as removing people from private businesses, businesses have a right to refuse service, and I don't see why that wouldn't include a state mandate for wearing a mask.
Okay, well, let's move on. So also, we touched a little bit upon this earlier, but 3 times Sheriff Snaza refused to comply with this I-940 mandate, which requires independent investigations into the police use of deadly force. And you called for independent investigations. Can you give us a little bit more information about that?
I know that there was information that so I-940 obviously requires the independent investigations, and those were violated. And I can't tell you why. What I can tell you is that someone who spent time talking to both John and I told me, they went through and they asked me a bunch of stuff. And one of the topics was, I explained to them how John is still utilizing his twin brother, even in an election year, right? Even in a year where I would expect John to just toe the line, right, and do everything prim and proper. And then once you get elected, okay, you get to relax for 4 years. So even in an election year, still having his twin brother investigate him. And that person went to John and said, hey, John, this deputy is telling me kind of some concerning stuff. And he came back and told me that John's response to him was essentially, well, I mean, it's not unlawful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so those are the things where, because there are loopholes in I-940, right? I-940 only requires an independent investigation if the deputy used force. So if a deputy, shoots and kills someone, I-940 requires an independent investigation. If a deputy puts handcuffs on someone and they die in police custody, you can pick who investigates you. And so John picks his twin brother. I still don't understand the purpose of that. Even if you don't think your deputies did anything wrong, why would you not want the cleanest possible investigation for the family, for the deputy, for the community? So that would be my approach. Again, this is not complicated, and I don't understand what the holdup is. Why so much dragging of the feet to just comply with this kind of stuff? But I think there was another one that I may have gotten mixed up with that you were talking about, because the sheriff's offices and the police departments were supposed to send, I can't remember what data it was, to Bob Ferguson. There was some scenario, I can't remember the exact details. Yeah. And once again, the sheriff refused to send that information over in a timely manner. These are things where the state wants its information, and I guess I just personally don't understand why we don't give them the information, unless you have something to hide.
Yeah. Well, another criticism of the sheriff's department has been that they've gone over budget significantly. And I don't know what the current situation is, but a couple of years ago, it came up that the county commissioners were pretty upset. I think the sheriff's department went something like $500,000 over budget. So what do you think the sheriff what can be done to run the department more economically? And, how would you approach that?
So my approach to that, because I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, John. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm some math whiz and that I've worked a bunch of budgets in my life. That's not me. I work graveyard shift. I'm a deputy. I just know how to fight crime. I know how to find people that don't want to be found. I know how to keep people safe. That's my job. And so that kind of leads me into the misconception I think that people have about what the sheriff does. And we talked about it briefly, right? But the sheriff, if people think that John is running the budget, he's not, right? I mean, John may have demands, and maybe those demands are overriding what people below him are advising him to do. But John has a chief financial services. So there's a chief who runs basically his whole finance operation. And he's obviously got an undersheriff. And those positions are the ones that are ultimately driving budgetary decisions. Now, obviously the sheriff can say, no, I want to buy that anyways. And, they're going to oblige likely. But my solution to that is I have not picked an undersheriff. And the reason I have not picked an undersheriff is that my plan is to do a nationwide search for undersheriff. That position is extremely important. That is the right hand of the undersheriff. They're responsible for running a lot of the operations at the sheriff's office and balancing a budget and making sure that all the goals that we have that we're achieving within a budget and not going over. So my plan to combat that is do a nationwide search for undersheriff and find a professional undersheriff that can come in. You know, maybe the best fit for undersheriff is right here in Thurston County. Maybe it's in Miami. Maybe it's in California. I don't know. It could come from an agency that's 3 times bigger than Thurston County, where someone comes in and they're a budget whiz. But that's what I need to run the budget at Thurston County. Law enforcement operations are complex. We all know that. And so that's my plan to combat the inexperience that I have in that position.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an area where you would need to learn and
Yeah,
on the
absolutely.
job kind of.
Yep.
So, well, anyway, so this is a kind of a different, getting something a little different here, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but let me ask it anyway.
Yeah.
Sheriff
Go for it.
Snaza was involved in a serious motorcycle accident a few years ago.
Yep.
And there have been rumors going around that it affected his competency to lead the department. What do you think? I mean, do you have any position on this, or care to comment on it, or just what do you think?
You know, I'm going to stay neutral on that. The only thing that I will say is that it has come up in guild meetings before. It has come up around the department. And it's not so much that people are out questioning John's mental health or anything like that. It is just the fact that the guy wasn't wearing a helmet and he sustained a serious brain injury. And so I was in the academy when this happened, right? And I got the call at, 9:30 at night. That was basically like, the sheriff's been involved in a serious motorcycle accident. He's probably dead. He's probably not coming back, right? And so that's a crazy thing to learn as a recruit sitting up in CTAC trying to focus on, defensive tactics the next day. So what I can tell you is that I've experienced some stuff that would lend you to believe that like traumatic brain injuries are serious. But I can't comment, I've heard things and people have told me stuff, but I can't comment on whether or not, it's drastically impacting his competency. I can just tell you that I don't know how it wouldn't, right? I mean, if I sustained a TBI tomorrow, I wouldn't be talking to you like this, right? It would be a substantial change in how I perceive things and my talking. And so I'm going to stay politically neutral, obviously, on my opponent's mental health and all that kind of stuff, because that's his business, and it's probably pretty sensitive to him going through that. But obviously, I mean, there were some mistakes made that day, and I'm sure he probably regrets that.
Okay, well, so let's assume that you win the sheriff's position, and so you're, how would you, how do you think you'd be accepted by the sheriff's office, by the employees there, and do you have a plan to revamp the management should you win?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I like this stuff. So I think that first and foremost, you'd have some not early retirements, because there's people that are here that are hanging on. They're well past retirement age, but I think you'd see retirements come in, right? Just like anything else, military, police, people have a hard time taking orders from someone who hasn't been here as long as them, or they don't feel as earned it, right? So in the event that I become the youngest sheriff in county history, I suspect that at the top end of things, there's going to be some issues as far as taking commands or going in a new direction, right? Especially because a lot of what I'm doing is challenging police culture. I'm challenging the way that we have always done things. We are skipping, if I'm elected, we're skipping multiple generations of potential successors to John. We're cutting right to the point. And so I've been told that there's some captains that'll leave. But what's ironic about that is as much as that's kind of sad to me that they would just up and leave, I plan on eliminating the captain positions anyways, because we're one of the most top heavy departments in this entire region. We may be the most top heavy department in the entire state. I'm not sure. But we have a sheriff, we have an undersheriff, we have 3 chiefs. Under them, we've got 2 captains, and then we've got, 4 lieutenants, I think. And then we've got 13, 14 sergeants, something like that. And then your deputies. And so we just get to the point where there are so many administrators above us that my plan will ultimately be to likely eliminate the captain positions, bring those lieutenants that are below them up just slightly in a pay bump, and they will be the top. There won't be any higher rank than that for promotions because the chiefs are appointed. So there will be some restructuring, and my plan is to take those captain positions, convert them into deputies, and that will fund our homeless response team, which I've called Hope. It's not a new program. It's been out there quite some time. It works. And that's basically where we're pairing 2 deputies up with 2 social workers, and going out and getting into a lot of these homeless camps and things like that, and trying to really address these issues at the root level.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, and that might also help with some of the financial difficulties there at the department too.
Yep.
Get rid of some.
Yeah. I mean, these
payroll-
captains, they make good
payroll.
money.
Yeah.
And I'm not sitting here saying they don't do work or they don't do good work. I just, how many administrators do you truly need for an agency that doesn't even have that many deputies at this point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're running out of deputies and we've got plenty of administrators. And so, my plan is to try and revamp that and make it make sense, right? Is there somewhere else where the captain positions, if they're converted to deputies, can make a bigger impact on issues that people actually care about in our community, right? Homelessness, one of the top issues I come across all the time. Homelessness.
Right.
Why does Thurston County not have anything to do with homelessness then? We should be getting involved with that.
Absolutely. Well, I don't have any more questions for you right now. Are there any questions from the audience that anybody would like to bring up? That I don't see any more in the chat. So
Can I talk out loud?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm just wondering what your campaign infrastructure is. I mean, I only discovered you were running when I was just too upset to even think about voting for SNAZA. So that was just like a few days ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not like illiterate on the politics in the area. So like what do you have a campaign manager? What do you have going?
I'm using a consulting firm because I knew that if I tried to take John on one-on-one, I would lose, right? Because John has not released any platform issues. He's running solely on his name. He's not put any policies out. He's not told us what he's going to do differently. He's put up signs and he's let his supporters basically just talk about him. For me, I knew that if I just went and put some signs up that, I probably don't stand a chance. So I went and found a reputable consulting agency that has taken down a few incumbent sheriffs in their time. I should say a few incumbents, one of them being an incumbent sheriff and incumbent prosecutor, and got to work with them. So I have a consulting firm. As far as a campaign manager, I'm kind of my own campaign manager because I don't find the work too difficult. It's really scheduling. And the consulting firm takes care of all the back end stuff for me anyway. So my job is really just to go out and find connections and meet people. The reason that you haven't really heard about me is because unfortunately I got into the game really late. I did not announce my candidacy until April, which is, a couple weeks before filing date. And so I'm just behind the curve on a lot of this stuff. So, John and I are obviously going to go through the primary, which gives me 3 months to start really hitting the doorbelling. And I've raised quite a bit of money, in my opinion, quite a bit of money for a first-time candidate so far. I'm almost at $11,000, I think. And to put it in perspective, John started with a balance of $15,000 from his last reelection, but he's raised $15,000 so far this year. So I'm just barely trailing John, and my name is just starting to really get out there after I've started attending the parades and things like that. But I'm seeing just in the last 2 weeks or so exponential growth in my popularity. I got endorsed by Teamsters, Joint Council 28, the union. I got endorsed by Tumwater Fire Department. I've been endorsed by the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. And so I'm starting to pick up some key endorsements. And it looks like I also am going to have a lot of, or at least some of John's former command staff endorsing me as well. So prior.
Got the endorsement of Olympia Indivisible.
Yes, Olympia Indivisible. Obviously, I'm here tonight. And I'm also working on some other things within the city of Tumwater. So Tumwater's mayor already endorsed me, and I'll be working on Olympia City Council next and continuing to go down the list. So you'll hear about me more. It's just I did get into the game pretty late.
Yeah, maybe you should work on Ty Menser. That'd be a great endorsement to get.
I actually just emailed him. So he's the last commissioner. I already met with Mejia. I met with Gary Edwards. So I want to meet. I want to meet with everyone. I want to figure out what can I do as the sheriff to make your life easier as a commissioner, right? And it's pretty sad talking with all of the elected officials that I've met with, at least most of them. And they're just like, I just want you to talk to me. I just want to have some sort of relationship. I mean, they're like, we can't get a hold of John. And when we do, it's not pleasant. And so I'd really like to prepare that because we rely on our city partners so substantially, especially when you're running a sheriff's office that has not that many deputies left. in the grand scheme of things, and we're constantly needing help from the cities. It'd be great if we could have a better relationship with them at the top.
Okay. Well, we have Catherine, I guess.
I have another question.
Okay.
What else is Olympia Indivisible doing? Are we doing anything else for Derek, or?
Well, that's what I was going to ask Derek, what he'd like us to do. And, you know, we're just getting started. So unfortunately, you know, we don't have to, the primary is, you know, we're going to be through the primary. So we have several months here before the November election. And we'll get a pretty good idea on August 2nd, where you stand in terms of, because we get a kind of a test.
Get a poll. Yep.
Yeah.
Kind of get a poll out of it.
Mm-hmm.
John,
You know,
we
we
also
just-
have a question from Janine, John.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see.
She has her hand up, and I think she
Oh, I
just
have her hand
unmuted.
up.
There you
Okay.
go.
Mhm.
I can
Yeah.
speak. Yeah, I just unmuted. Yeah, really, I was going to say a couple things. One is what I think John already asked it, but what would your consultants tell us would be the most important thing for us to do to support you, and give us some ideas other than just money. And the other is that I would not think that Ty Minzer would have any problem endorsing you. And I guess that leads me to say that a number of us should definitely go to Ty and ask him to
Right.
do so. So if there's any question of that at all, which I don't think there would be, but I do think that getting those important local endorsements, I mean, maybe you should go to, we have Beth Dolio running for representative again, and you could, I don't know if you're going to Jessica
I
Bateman.
met her
or-
today. I met Beth today, and on our way out, she said, "Let me know if there's anything I can do for you."
Oh,
So
let her know.
um,
Yeah, like definitely get
I will.
every name you can.
Yep.
Because those are some of the only things people see once they go look you up, you know, sometimes.
Sure.
But anyway, what do you think the top 3 things we can actually do that are powerful would be?
You know, again, my consulting firm would tell you money, right? Like, because they're all about fundraising, because once they get to the end, towards the primaries, their specialty has a lot to do with contrast ads, and things like that. So that's how they've taken down most of their incumbents, is doing really good job on contrast ads. For me, you know, the money thing is kind of on the side, but the big one is going to be doorbelling. I still feel personally, and the consulting agency feels as well, that doorbelling is still the most effective way to win votes.
Agreed.
And so I will definitely need, what I'll probably need the most moving forward is, I've got quite a few volunteers coming on. I'm going to need a volunteer coordinator, someone who can really help me. It's getting to be unmanageable, because so many people are offering to join on, and they want to go doorbell in their neighborhood or whatever it is, to kind of manage that and kind of have a map of it going on, so that we're not constantly, you know, crossing over and hitting the same houses twice and things like that. So that's going to be probably the big thing that I'm focusing on, is the doorbelling side of things. And, you know, again, it takes money to win elections. It's unfortunate. I hate asking people for money. It's uncomfortable for me, which is why I'm trying to fund as much of my campaign as I can. I mean, obviously I'm on a deputy salary, so I have other obligations in my personal life, but so far, I mean, I anticipate probably spending close to $10,000.
But what about
cash on
signs?
this.
Are you
I do
doing
have signs. I do have signs. They have not been a priority of my campaign. I waited until I hit my fundraising goal of $10,000 before I bought signs, because I didn't want to just start buying signs, not have enough cash balance to even carry me to the primary. So I do have signs. I'm almost out, so I got to go buy another batch. I bought 100 of them, and they went like the first day.
I think
I
you
had
really
so many
need,
people.
I think you need signs, because
Yeah.
without that, how do you get this name recognition that you need so
Yep.
badly? You're gonna need
Yep.
signs. Also, you do need a campaign manager, maybe a
Yeah.
volunteer coordinator, but I really recommend that you get someone who's coordinating all of, you know, your doorbelling and your sign posting and all that stuff. So
Yeah, and you know, the consulting firm helps with a lot of that. They assist with the doorbelling and things like that, and strategy. But I don't have a formal campaign manager, if you will, because so far the only thing I've had is I've been trying to get the key endorsements, and really hitting those hard, and they're coming in now. So Tumwater Fire was really the first big local one, and the rest are starting to kind of open up after them. So yeah, I probably should get a campaign manager at some point, though.
Okay, so while we're closing on, excuse me,
I
almost an
think
hour. Here, so-
John, Lisa
Yeah.
does have a question too, as
Okay.
does Tracy.
Oh, I see the hand up. Yeah.
There you
Okay.
go. Gotcha.
Okay, so Lisa first and then Tracy.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I just wanted to say a couple of things about volunteering for Derek or other campaigns. One of them is that I have some Derek Sanders campaign signs available at my house. I'm going to drop my Olympia Indivisible address in the chat right now. And if you want a yard sign for Derek or any of our endorsed candidates, send me an email. Tell me which ones you want. I live in Southeast Olympia, and you can just pick them up anytime. I just will share my address when you let me know what you'd like. That's one thing I wanted to say. Another thing I want to say is that if you're passionate about seeing Derek or any of our endorsed candidates elected, join our candidate interface team. We need more volunteers. That just means that you're going to step up, and we will put you in touch with the candidate of your choice, and you can be doing outreach. You can be doing whatever kind of volunteerism that you're inclined to do. But that's a great way to do that. So again, same address, because right now that's a hat I'm wearing. I'm lead of the candidate interface team. I'd love to hear from you. If any of you are interested in doing that kind of work, just get in touch with me. There's, whatever time you have, whatever skill set you're bringing, whatever you like to do or you really don't want to do, we'll find a place to plug you in on the campaign of your choice. So please do get in touch. The last thing I wanted to mention is that for campaign volunteering for events that are coming up, are you all aware that they're on our website, the Olympia Indivisible website, there is a campaign support calendar? And you can find that calendar about 60 gazillion ways, but one of the ways you can find it is you just go to the home page and you go to the right top, the menu, at the top of the page, go to the more, which is on the right hand side, and I believe that the very first item is candidate support calendar. And
Can I make a comment here?
yes, please do.
You don't have to go to more when you get into the Facebook page. There's 3 boxes on the top. The left-hand box says 2022 elections. At the bottom of that box, just click there and you go directly to the calendar.
Right, and I just want to specify that that is our webpage, not our Facebook page. And yes, indeed, on that left-hand box. So
Exactly.
It's really easy. And those campaign, we've got all of our endorsed candidates. We update all the time. I'm saying this, I'm looking at you, Derek. I'm just looking at you. So tell us when you're going to do stuff so we can put it into our calendar, and we put in all the details on the, if it says doorbell for Derek, you click on that and it's going to give you will pop a little box about all the details that you need to go out and doorbell for Derek. So it's one-stop shopping. We're making it easy. It's easy to volunteer for the candidate of your choice with Olympia Indivisible. Just go check out that page, okay? That I will now get off my soapbox. Bye.
I'm just going to piggyback off that because that brings up something else that I was going to think about telling you guys. Is the other thing too is, so before running for candidacy, right? I mean, 6 months ago, I was going to work and going home, right? And that was kind of my life, right? I just went to work, did the best of my abilities, and went home. If there are things that you guys think that I should be going to, right? If anyone knows of an event where I can go hit, 50, 100, 150 people at a time, that they would welcome me to speak, feel free to email me and invite me to those things, because sometimes I miss these opportunities because I don't know that they even exist, right? Mm-hmm. If there's something in downtown Olympia, there's something up on South Bay or wherever it is in the county, I'll go. I'll work my best to make time for it. But I recognize in the past that I've missed some opportunities just because I'm like, I have no idea that was even going on in the county, right? Yeah. So feel free to email me. any of those dates, if you guys see something that comes up, you're like, hey, I'm going to this, I think it's going to be a good idea for you to go out there, and give me some literature, we'll hand it out while we're there and see if they'll let us speak, whatever it is. Feel free to shoot me an email. Like I said, I'm very receptive.
Derek, could you drop your email address into the chat, please, so folks can get in touch?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think Tracy still has her hand up. Would you
Yes.
like to say something?
Yeah, I had a question. One of the big things that as a state employee, I hear, I work sort of in the governor's office, and I hear about different things going on.
Yep.
One of the ones that came up recently was the asking that the sheriff's offices and different police departments in the state not work with states who are trying to look for pregnant people who are coming into the state to get an abortion. And yeah, it may seem like an obvious question, but it's one I gotta ask. Is that something you would support, since the sheriff's office has its own jurisdiction, and so the governor can only ask? So
Yep.
I'm just curious on that.
As sheriff, the sheriff's office will not assist in anything abortion related. It's not even a law enforcement issue. So it's sad to me that this is even a question, right? The idea of criminalizing abortion, right? We can have our own opinions on it, right? Pro-life, pro-choice, whatever it is. But the idea of going the route of criminalizing it, my sheriff's office would never take part in. We would not assist with any other departments outside of the state. It's not a law enforcement issue. It is a societal issue at best. It is not law enforcement related. And to even go beyond the moral and ethical side of things, our sheriff's office does not have time to go look for females from other states who are here or whatever, trying to get abortions, or over there trying to get it. We don't have time for that. So no, to answer your question, the sheriff's office would not assist with anything abortion related to try and hunt down females who are seeking abortions.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate just having it said out loud.
Yeah. It's sad that it needs to be said out loud, but again.
Yeah. Yeah, we're living in strange times right now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. One thing that we can all agree on is that we need a new sheriff in town, and Derek, you're our guy. So
Well, I appreciate the
we'll do what
support.
we can. And Derek put his website is also listed up here. And I urge everybody to go there and, make a small donation or a large donation if you can, because I think we really need to help Derek get elected. So let's do everything we can.
Appreciate all the support.
Yeah, so I think that's about it. So thanks so much, everybody, for coming tonight. And thanks, Derek, for being here. And, go get them.
Thank you for having me. And again, I look forward to serving as the 24th Sheriff of Thurston County.
Me too.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.